Welcome to Sparking Everyday Discipleship, where we disciple parents to disciple their children with everyday discipleship every day. I'm your host, Terrie Hellard-Brown, and we're so glad you decided to spend some time with us today. Today, our guest is Dennis Conrad, and he has a brand new novel out that we cannot wait to tell you about. I am so excited to share this with you, and I know that you will be blessed by the conversation. This book will open up some great opportunities to disciple the young adults and teens in our lives, or to read together as a family and open up the conversation with your whole family. This is a great book. Let's jump into the conversation. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to introduce our guest. Once again, Dennis Conrad is with us, and we have some exciting things to talk about today. So, Dennis, thank you for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here. What an honor again to see you after a couple of years and two children's books later. I've got another one coming out, and I'm just glad to be with you.
That's true. You wrote two picture books. One, I have them on my screen over here. The Two Cent Piece in God We Trust series, and the Marcus and the Emperor's Coin, which is in that same series. But now you've turned a corner and shifted away from picture books. What caused you to change to writing novels instead of picture books?
Well, I originally, as you may recall, got a 7-book deal with Elk Lake Publishing. And what happened after the first 2 books is my editor left, the publisher, and she said, I'm going to revert your rights back to you for the next 5 books so you can publish them on your own or do whatever you like. But I'll tell you what happened. That was a pretty serious blow in one way, but it ended up turning out to be a blessing because this book came as a result of me trying to pitch around the 3rd book in the series. And this one publisher said, oh, I'd love to have it as a later book, a little bit older students. And I took on the challenge, and that was really a big change for me.
And the new book is called Titus and the Christian Coin, and it is a young adult novel. I think it also could be read by middle schoolers on up. I really love this novel. Was it difficult to make the shift from picture books to novels?
Yes, I'll just say that I had a couple of different places that I would write. One was a Chick-fil-A, and the thing that kept me motivated there was the sweet tea. But I ended up having an opportunity. A friend of mine had been writing in an unfurnished, unrented apartment, and she told me that her friend might allow me to go ahead and use it as a writer's retreat. And I got the opportunity to do that. It was difficult before that with all of the distractions and things that people face in an everyday world. And as writers, that happens to us too.
Yeah.
If you can imagine what happened is I got a chance to have my book go from just being a hobby and writing to being on a mission. And that's what happened.
Well, you mentioned a mission, and there are so many amazing themes woven through this story, and it's such a beautiful story, and it is based on a true story, right?
Well, it's not quite a true story, but there are people who live this exact experience. And especially, there would be opportunities for people to be in crises in different settings, especially the challenges that would be faced. And that was some of the research that I did. I tried to find as many crises that would happen in 312 AD at the time of Constantine the Great that would happen to a young person who might be faced with persecution.
And so, how could we use this novel to bring in conversations about discipleship with our young adults and teens in our lives?
Well, I'll give you an example. For example, in the story, you have peer pressure, you have doubt, you have temptations and things like that. And any young person would be able to relate to Titus's story. If a parent, for example, were to read the book or even ask a simple question like, can you relate to what's happening to Titus? They'd say, yes, bullying is happening to me right now. I can go ahead and respond with a Christian response to that kind of behavior. So that would be helpful there. So a grandparent or a parent can actually have what I used to tell for my children's books was to have the salvation conversation with the next generation. Now it's a little bit more informal when you're dealing with a 12 to 18-year-old you're really trying to get on their island and find out what they have to think and what their attitudes are. And this is really excellent too, because say, for example, a parent or a grandparent does not have a believing child and they are thinking about walking away from the faith. This would be an opportunity to really engage and say, here's an example of a young person who is surviving persecution. In the face of that, they are maintaining their faith.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite part woven through the entire novel is Titus wrestling with integrity, with making the right choices and recognizing that he was in danger of death, in danger of all kinds of persecution, and yet he had to make that choice. And it reminded me when I was, I think, a sophomore in high school, I watched that old movie, Quo Vadis. It was even old when I was in high school, but I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but that impacted my Christian walk in a huge way because I had never at that time thought about what I would do if faced with persecution. Would I stand firm? Would I stand strong in my faith? And I think this book allows our young people to take a moment and think about how they would respond in certain situations. And I think that's really invaluable.
I'm glad you shared that. And I'll be very aware that you never know who's going to read this book and it
Mhm.
might end up changing their life.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. Well, you've mentioned something about fifth grade. What happened to you in fifth grade? And what is your message to parents and grandparents as a result?
Well, when I was in the fifth grade, I had a teacher ask me, have you ever had your eyes checked? Because I was in the third reading group, even at that stage. And that teacher changed my life because my parents took me. We got glasses at that point, and I was able to actually read. Imagine this, though, even between the 11th and 12th grade, I won a full ride scholarship to the University of Kansas for a debate institute.
Wow.
There, you had to read out loud your evidence in the speech and debate contests that we would have. Then I went on and ultimately got a master's in speech communication and taught the subject for many years and ultimately became a professor. So if you can imagine going from one level of not being able to read well out loud to being able to use that in a career, just amazing opportunities opened up for me as a result of getting my glasses. I have another friend who unfortunately did not find out until she was an adult that she needed glasses, and that was the only thing that was holding her back.
Wow. Yeah, I had a student, even in kindergarten, we didn't recognize. She had hearing loss and vision loss. And we were able to get her tested then, thankfully, early on in school. But we had no idea. She was always treated, I mean, I say always, she was in preschool before then, but, she'd been suspect of causing trouble and looking on other people's papers and all that. And that was her survival technique because she couldn't hear me well enough to answer a question. She couldn't see what I was telling them to do and understand everything. And so she would cheat her way through. And if we hadn't caught it then, I always think about if she had gone into the upper elementary, she would have been the troublemaker. She would have been in the principal's office. She might have been expelled for cheating. And here she was just trying to survive because she couldn't see or hear well. That's got to be our first thing is make sure students are hearing and seeing okay. And we did that. I taught remedial reading for a while, and sometimes it was just a hearing loss or a vision problem, and they would catch up. So, yeah, that's such an important thing.
I use a catchphrase, be wise, check their eyes. And that has been something that I've shared with a lot of people, telling parents and what have you, if I see something that may look amiss.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice. So, you believe that reading not only changes lives, but that reading can also save lives. What do you mean by that?
Well, in the instance of Titus, there's a situation that he's facing. Let's just give the example of a person who's persecuting you. How do you love them? How do we love our neighbor or how do we love somebody who's an enemy? In that situation, that would be an example of how an illustration in the story could go ahead and be used in real life.
Yeah. It's just so amazing to see the choices that Titus makes as a young person. And I just pray that it inspires young people to stand firm and to be people of integrity who can learn to love their enemies and to pray for them. And like you said, even in some situations, make a difference in their lives or save their lives. Also, I think too, when we have that firm faith and we help our children have that ability to stand strong, they're not going to fall into what we're seeing in some of the secular culture where children are suicidal, giving up hope. When we help our children stand firm in their faith, we're also helping them stand firm in hope and to understand that any trial we're facing is temporary, even if it's the worst thing we can think of, it's temporary, and God can heal and he can bring good out of a situation if we put it in his hands and trust him. I hate the expression, God will never give us anything more than we can handle, because I totally think that's wrong.
You're right, and that is wrong.
Yeah. I think there's lots of things in life I can't handle on my own. I need to turn to God for help and strength and perseverance. And our young people have got to learn that as well as we're discipling them and teaching them. This book is a fantastic opportunity to open up some really important conversations. And like you said, to find out what our kids are actually going through and experiencing that is causing them so much pain or whatever. This is such a great story to open up those conversations.
Just think about the mockery that some students face or other kinds of, peer pressure and things like that. As I said, bullying, but also the deep questions that young people are asking today. And to be able to have a forum to be able to discuss those things is really important.
Yeah, and to be the first one as their parents or grandparents to approach these important conversations is so vital as well, so that they're not going to their peers only or to someone who doesn't have the same worldview to talk about how to handle things. So we've got to be brave parents and start those conversations. I think that's just so vital, especially in our culture today. And the books like this give us that opportunity, and I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about your picture books in case someone hasn't watched the show and listened to our former interview. Tell us about those real quickly, too.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a hint. I was a coin collector, and I've shared that before, but I collected coins for 50 years. And in this 50-year process, I found myself toward the end of this many years of collecting. My wife said, "Why don't you sell your collection?" I said, "I'm not selling my collection. I love my collection." And that is about the time that I was convicted by a still small voice that said, "Your coins have become more important than I have. You need to sell them." So I did, and ultimately sold my coins and paid off my home mortgage, which was a whole big world of difference. But to be able to integrate stories with coins and faith are some of my two favorite topics. And I'll give you an example. The 2 cent piece is about the first coins with the words "In God We Trust." Okay, and this coin came out originally in 1864. So it's the time of the American Civil War. I had an expert work with me to be able, he actually donated his entire collection to a museum. So he coached me on the kinds of things that were happening at the time. And one of the things that was really true is Israel and the United States had some trading. And one of the things that would happen would be a small box that would come over. And that small box is where some of the coins were kept. So this is a young girl who gets her coins and then she wants to keep them because she's a coin collector, but she decides to give them away because her brothers are going off to fight in the American Civil War. And what happens to the coins and what happens to the brothers is the rest of the story.
And it's a good one. Okay, and tell us about Marcus.
Well, Marcus is a young boy who's very clumsy, and he is growing up. And in the process, his father decides that he's going to take him on a mission for the Emperor of Rome. They go to a number of places, including a mine where silver ore is mined. And there's a real place, Lugdunum. It used to be where they would mint the coins. He gets to go to a mint. He actually gets to attempt to make one. He hits his thumb, so he hurts himself, but he actually makes a coin where he is making what is called a denarius. Well, later on in the story, he sees Jesus hold up a denarius coin and he says, "Give to the emperor the things that are the emperor, and unto God the things that are God." And we know that phrase is "give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's." For a younger audience, ages 5 to about 7.5 or 8, we changed it to emperor, but the message is the same. And Jesus is saying, prioritize your life in terms of what God says and seek ye first the kingdom of God type of thing. Ultimately, what happens is here, this young boy, his life becomes purposeful because he has seen Jesus say that.
Yeah. I love both of those books. And I think of the three, though, Titus is my favorite. It just really is a fantastic novel. And I was so honored that you asked me to read it ahead of time and to give you my feedback on it. And I couldn't put it down. You know, we say that about books a lot of times, but I really couldn't. I would almost fall asleep and I'm like, but I want to finish the story. So I'd doze off and then I'd wake up and read some more. I read it faster than I've read any novel lately. It was really compelling. So I highly endorse this and recommend families get this for Christmas for your families. Get this and give it to the young people in your life. Read it as a family, read aloud. I think it is just a great story. And I think it will open up those important conversations. I love all your books, but Titus is my favorite. So you always have free resources with your books and some really amazing things on your website. Tell us about what you have for this book.
Well, I just want to stop for a moment and say thank you for the glowing compliments. But I do want to say that I had a co author. Dorinda Babcock was my editor, and she's been my co author. And she has done a phenomenal job with taking what I'll call close point of view. And
Mm,
when people hear about that and they understand that great movies have it and good books have it as well, the best books. And what she was able to do is take the experiences in the story and actually make it feel like you're living those stories. And that's why a person can't put it down, because they want to go ahead and continue experiencing what Titus is experiencing and the feelings and the tastes and the other emotions that he's involved with. And you asked about next steps or whatever. I just think that there's some great opportunities there.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. So will you have free resources on your website to go with this book as
Yes,
well?
not actually with this book, but because they're coin collecting. So
Okay.
many of the readers will want to take up coin collecting. And at my website, I have free resources that include, and Dorinda Babcock helped me put these together. They are activity sheets. So, for example, we'll have a coin that we highlight, but there's also a coin search, and there's also some coin history. So, the coin search actually will be something so simple as there are nickels out there with different heads of Thomas Jefferson. So find different ones and then be able to compare them. The same is true with the back of the US 1 cent, the penny. Go ahead and find those, and you see all of the different types of backs, and you have a number of different ones. So the coins are very simple and easy to find and not expensive at all, but you're learning about, for example, ordering them, and you order the ones from the worst condition to the best condition. That's the whole idea of grading. So ideas are introduced in a very simple way, but they give illustrations for young children to be able to do that, and also for teens.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love coin collecting too. I grew up with it. My dad collects coins. So, Dennis, one of the things I love about this podcast is getting to interview people who not only are writers, but who are ministers, who are living out their faith, who are disciples of Christ, just so we can pray for you. Are there some things you can share about your ministry that's coming up? I know maybe you can't share everything, but God is using you in a unique way. And can you share that with us a little bit?
Yes, I can. I have an opportunity through a large organization which you've heard of, but I won't mention the name, and that is to actually teach something called, and I won't even say the name, but I'll just say it's a simple approach to teaching the gospel. And I have an opportunity. I've also gone down to appear opportunities that happen to be down near the ocean, and I've been able to share the gospel in those kinds of settings, one on one with people who would walk up and answer a riddle. So the conversation ultimately turns to eternal subjects. And so these types of conversations become divine appointments. I have traveled overseas pretty extensively, and I've been able to teach there. Some of the places that I've gone have been very open and receptive, and other places have been very closed. And I'm going to a place that is closed for a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to go on to a more open place where I'll actually be able to preach at a church for a Sunday service and be able to share the gospel. And so I've done some, to answer your question, some one-on-one. I've done some group, and I've also gone as a teacher where I've been able to have an opportunity to get into places where other people can't go, but people ask me questions, and then there's a great opportunity for divine appointments. Thank you for asking that. And I do need some prayer the next number of weeks here.
All right. Yes. And we will be praying. It's so exciting. God is moving. He's doing some interesting things in missions right now where I see, just from our perspective, what we're experiencing. The soil is really hard in some places, and we need to be in prayer. I feel like God just keeps bringing us back. Prayer is the most important thing we can do right now, to pray for missionaries, to pray for those who have boots on the ground, for each of us as we're sharing with those around us. Because if God doesn't soften the hearts, if God doesn't help us till the ground where the seeds can even go in and be planted and take root, we can't do it ourselves. This is God's mission. And we need to pray for each other, and we need to pray fervently and seriously about what God is trying to do in our world today, because it's not going to happen no matter how hard we try if we don't rely on Him. And I think that is just so important. So, Dennis, I appreciate you being here so much. And as we wrap up, what's one last thing you might want our listeners to know?
Well, as Titus would say, he'd say, Jesus is the only way to salvation. And he'd also say that whatever is befalling you and crises that might be happening, don't give up. Always persist. God will never leave you or forsake you. And even in the story, he has verses that he returns to that he holds sacred, and he's able to go ahead and be reinforced, and his faith is encouraged. Find yourself too in scripture to be able to find answers like that. Thank you again for having me. And just, whoa, I really appreciate our opportunity to get together again.
Me too. It's been wonderful talking with you again and praying with you about the mission work we're both doing in different places. I was just thinking as you were talking, the biggest thing we can do for our children in preparing them for this non-Christian culture, anti-Christian culture. The point is our kids are going to face persecution. We did in certain ways growing up, but I think it's just intensified. And what you mentioned is so vital. If they can have the word of God in their hearts and in their heads, God can use that to strengthen them and help them stand and to walk through whatever comes their way.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
we've got to get serious, don't we, about our faith. We don't have any time to be playing church. We've got to get serious about our walk with God. And that's, I think, my biggest message on my platform is let's just get real here and let's take prayer and the Bible seriously. We don't have time to waste.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to go ahead and be encouraging here because there are going to be, as I said, families who may have unbelieving grandkids or whatever. And those people have a need to hear the faith message without it being forced or preachy. And this book allows that to take place. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah, that's great. That's a good point. It gets very real. It looks at life in the nitty gritty and how we can still have faith even in those gritty places. And that's what we need. That's what our kids need. It gets very real. So, yeah, I agree 100%. Well, thank you again, Dennis. This has been awesome. And again, the book is Titus and the Christian Coin. When is it actually coming out?
Actually, it was put up on Amazon yesterday. So by the time this is aired, it will be on Amazon. And if you are going to search for it, search by the name Titus and the Christian Coin. And then there'll be an opportunity for the algorithm at Amazon to learn about the book. So that's one of the ways that the book becomes more popular.
All right, great. Yes, please, if you read the book, give Dennis a review. It is so important. It helps the book be more visible. and to come up in searches so more families can find this amazing book. So it just takes like 1 minute to write a review and give a rating. And we just really appreciate that from you listeners, if you'll take the time to do that. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you and have a great trip. We'll be praying for you. Let us know how it goes. We'd love to hear from you when you get back. And as always, God bless you and keep us updated on your next adventures.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for spending time with us today. If we sparked any questions or you want to make a comment, please go to my website, terriehellard-brown.com, and you can find the blog post for this episode and comment there, or you can comment on YouTube where we post the video. We love to hear from you, and we respond to almost every comment or question and try to do our very best to do that. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. Dennis has this brand new book that is just launched. You can go to Amazon. If you read this book, we ask that you please post a review. It is so vital in our culture, in the algorithms, and the way things work today that we have book reviews. If we don't, our book can just be in oblivion. And this book needs to be out there for people to find. So if you have even just 2 minutes, go in and at least give a rating, 1 to 5 stars on Amazon, on Goodreads. Let people know you've read it and what you thought of it. If you have time to leave a comment, then that's even better. We appreciate it so much, and I appreciate that for my books as well. We need at least 50 reviews to even get noticed. So that's why it's so vital. So if you can do that, you are doing a great work in helping writers to be seen and heard and to affect lives. So we really, really appreciate that. The other thing that you can do to really help, especially with this podcast, is to go to Spotify and give us a rating there. You don't even have to leave a review, just choose the number of stars for any of your favorite podcasts. And I hope that we're one of them. But if you would go to Spotify, you don't have to download the app. You can just go to their website and leave a rating for our podcast, Everyday Discipleship Every Day, and for other podcasts that you listen to and love. It really does make a difference. And remember, we have many opportunities on my website for you to download free things, on Dennis's website as well. We'll have the links to both of those in the show notes. You can download free things, free activities for your kids, family things to do together. We also have a free Zoom session in my group for coaching and helping parents answer their questions for their family, building a family culture, helping with homeschool, or in helping to disciple their children. I hope that we can minister to you through these free things that we have available for you. We have worked hard on them. We've wanted to make things that will bless your family and will bless your children. So take time to take a peek, see if there's something you'd like to download. And if you join my mailing list, which you can also do on my website, on that main page, there you'll get even more freebies to download. So we try to do these things as a free offer so that you can have them and they can bless you and your family. Most of all, with all that we're doing, you know our hearts. We pray that you feel empowered, equipped, encouraged to walk by faith and to embrace everyday discipleship every day with the children in your life. God bless you.